to go. But look, my sister.
In Mark chapter 6. Mark chapter 6, verse 4 through 6. But Jesus said unto them, a prophet is not without honor, but in his own country, and among his own kin in his own house. And he could there do no mighty work, save that he laid his hands upon a few sick folks and healed them. And he marveled because of their unbelief. And he went round about the villages teaching. I want to talk from the thought this morning, the missed message. That's what I want to talk about, the missed message. When we think about this time of year, sadly, that for most people, the first things or the first words come to our head are words such as shopping, lights, trees, decorating, and malls. One psychiatrist said that most people don't need a tree to be turned upside down at Christmas. She says rampant consumerism, once confined to the holidays, has become a year-round American affliction. She further stated that she observes unhappy people trying to fill the emptiness of their lives by irresponsible spending, and then consulting psychiatrists like her to figure out what has gone wrong in their lives. Those of you who lived through the 60s, you remember this warning that was given and still has some truth to it, that everything you buy owns you. To pay for all their junk, people now work so hard that they're ruining their marriages, their families, and their health. That's why so many feel spiritually empty as the year winds down. If left unchecked, Christmas can be turned upside down in a hurry. Purchases can leave months of extra debt to pay off. Hectic schedules can rob an individual or family of much-needed rest during the holidays. The blinders of consumerism can, appropriately enough, leave someone searching for Christmas blind to the true meaning and the spirit of the holiday. It is interesting to note that Americans spend more than $23 billion every Christmas on toys and gadgets alone. More than the next 10 industrialized countries spend on toys combined. We have lost the message of what this season is all about. Not only did we lose the message, we'll see in the text how the message was also missed. From Nazareth to Bethlehem, there were countless opportunities to celebrate Christmas, and few people who managed to do so. The repercussions of missing Christmas, it goes far beyond a short season of decorations and rich foods. In the case of Nazareth, missing Christmas led to something far more troubling, for the community managed to miss life-changing faith even with Jesus living in their midst. That's dangerous, to have Jesus living in your midst and you miss him. The moment God became flesh, God with us took on a new meaning. Look over there in John chapter 1, verse 14, that familiar passage of scripture. But I found this. I got a bunch of Bibles in my Logos system, and I never used this one before, and something just happened for me to turn over to the Lexham English Bible, and something jumped out at me. One word jumped out at me in that version, and so I want to read it from that version, John chapter 1, verse 14. And the word became flesh. But this is what jumped out at me. And took up residence among us. And we saw the glory, his glory as of the one and the only from the Father, full of grace and truth. God, which is the Word, didn't just come in human form to take up residence in a manger. He came to take up residence in and among us. Can I say it again? He didn't just come in a manger to take up residence. He came to take up residence in and among us. And here's the irony. Here's the irony of an upside-down Christmas. The meaning of Christmas can hide in plain view, inviting all who would pause a chance to see the beauty of God's incredible gift. Yes, we like to reclaim the rest of the holiday. Yes, we like to remember the real reason for the celebration. Yes, we like to spend less money on gifts and realize what incredible gift God has given to us. But if we miss the meaning of this season of faith, we also might miss the opportunity for experiencing life-changing faith years to come. It happened that way in Nazareth when Jesus began his teaching ministry. He returned to Nazareth and was invited to preach in the synagogue. When Jesus delivered the same message that was already being accepted in other villages, the people of Nazareth refused to believe. Again, Mark chapter 6, verse 4, but Jesus said unto them, a prophet is not without honor, but in his own country, and among his own kin, in his own house. And he could there to do no mighty work, save that he laid his hands upon a few sick folks and healed them. What a stunning statement. Jesus was amazed at their lack of faith. If he asked his mother, he had known that the village had been nursing the problem for the past 30 years. Nazareth had heard not from one, but from two of his upstanding young adults that angels were delivering an important message from God, and yet the people of the village still refused to believe. They were far too familiar with Mary and Joseph to believe God might be using them. And Nazareth had seen evidence of Mary's pregnancy and evidence of Joseph's decision to believe a miracle had taken place. Nazareth had access to the scripture in his synagogue and had surely read the promise that a virgin will be born of child according to Isaiah chapter 7, verse 14. He says, therefore the Lord himself shall give you a sign. Behold, a virgin shall conceive and bear a son, and shall call his name Emmanuel. And then Matthew picks it up in Matthew chapter 2, verse 23, in a summary of several Old Testament prophets in Matthew chapter 2, verse 23. And he came and dwelt in a city called Nazareth, that it might be fulfilled, which was spoken by the prophets, he shall be called a Nazarene. And when their native son, a Nazarene, the one born of a woman, who still insisted her pregnancy had been a miracle, they refused to believe that Jesus might be the Messiah. Can I help somebody this afternoon? In other words, they became not only too familiar with Mary and Joseph, but they became too familiar with Jesus. He grown up among them. He lived among them every day for decades. And so though the miracles was already happening in other places, in the hometown of the faithless, people with disease, pain, and disabilities returned home, holding fast to their doubts and their problems. And I want to pause there and suggest that there is a danger with becoming too familiar with Jesus. Because when you become too familiar with him, you start treating him like your equal instead of your Lord. You'll run after him for only what he can give you, and you'll stop serving him because of who he is. And what happens is when he doesn't do what you want him to do, your faith now begins to waver. When you look at these folks, a little faith could have changed their lives and showed them far more the truths of Christmas. It would have shown them the impact of this story. And here's the reality. Most of us are familiar with Jesus as the folks in Nazareth. If you've ever been in church very long, if you've been in church long, you would know the stories. You sung the songs. You even memorized the scriptures. But there is still a huge gulf of faith and trust that is needed to bridge the gap. Matter of fact, you ought to ask yourself this Christmas, will Jesus be amazed at your faith? Or will he be amazed at your lack of faith? Would it be yet another Christmas filled with too much to do, too much food, and too many expenses? Or could this be a Christmas when faith finally takes hold, and like Mary, you might say, here am I. I am the Lord's servant. Then there's a few things that we see, and I promise I'll sit down and get out your way. We see here that this is the right time for the right message. Question you might ask is, what is the right message? Most of our culture seems to miss it. That in this season of frantic giving and going, there is a reason for the season. I know we say it, we quote it, we use it as a cliche that Jesus is the reason for the season. But do we really believe it? His name is Jesus, and he is called Emmanuel. The very word means the Lord saved, and God is with us. There's a sense that's telling the world about Jesus might never be easier than at Christmas, when the concept of gift giving is so clearly seen. It reminds me of a story that a woman was doing her last minute Christmas shopping at a crowded mall, and she was tired of fighting the crowds. She was tired of standing in lines like some of y'all at Black Friday. She was tired of fighting her way down the aisles looking for a gift that had sold out days before. And her arms were full of bulky packages, and when an elevator door opened, it was full, and the occupants of the elevator grudgingly tightened ranks to allow a small space for her in her load. And as the doors closed, she blurted out this statement. She says, "Whoever is responsible for this whole Christmas thing ought to be arrested, hung up, and killed." And a few others nodded their heads and grunted in agreement. And then from somewhere in the back of the elevator came a single voice and said, "Don't worry, they already crucified him." I want to suggest that when we lose the message about Christmas, in essence, what we are doing is crucifying Jesus all over again. When we miss worship and shop, we crucify him all over again. When family gatherings are more important than gathering in the name, that we crucify him all over again. When Christmas tree is held higher than the tree that he died on, we crucify him all over again. When gift giving is more important than tithing, we have crucified him all over again. When we invite somebody over for eggnog and cookies but won't invite them for church, we have crucified Jesus all over again, and we have lost the message of what Christmas. Somebody look at your neighbor and say, "Don't crucify him all over again. He was already hung once for us."
To go. What look? My sister. You better jump on board. Where I am now is way too small.